Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to tonight's meeting. I'd like to start with item one, which is apologies for absence and substitutions.
Chairman, for members of the committee, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Doyle and Councillor Steady. We also have apologies from the Leader of the Council, who was going to attend for item 7 on your agenda.
Thank you. Moving to the next item, which is item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Are we happy with those meetings? Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's one oversight there, which is present. I don't think our Vice Chairman was there at the last meeting, Mark Cousins. So he's showing as present on the minute, so that just needs to be removed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sure he was with us in spirit. Yes. With that amendment, are we happy with the minutes? Could I have a proposer? Thank you, Peter. Seconder? Thanks, Sue. Okay then, are we happy to accept those? Thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Obviously, if anything comes up during the meeting, please indicate and we'll record those for you. Item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Rule Procedure 38.
Yes, Chairman, we have a question from Councillor Bensalem, and I think you're going to read that, I would presume.
So, Mr. Chairman, can we seek reassurance that all departments regularly review their preferred providers / suppliers, and that any contracts awarded follow a set policy of due diligence, and if this is the case, please confirm how suppliers are vetted, when they were last reviewed, and when they will next be reviewed. This is of course especially important for larger regular contracts.
Okay, thank you for that question, to which I've received the following response. Assurance can be provided from the procurement team, including support from Essex County Council under the Council Service Level Agreement for the provision of procurement services, that tenders processed by them do not have a preferred contractors list, and that the correct governance is followed throughout the procedure. Depending on the amount that the contract is worth will depend on the route to tender, whether that be request for quotation, RFQ between 10,000 and 50,000, or invitation to tender, ITT, over 50,000. Invitation to tender Invitation to tender are handled by Essex County Council and will generally be on contracts finder or from a framework. If open tender, not via a framework, any company may submit a tender. RFQ locked tender boxes are controlled by procurement, but the information and specification to submit quotes is completed by the relevant service and is the responsibility of the service. By emailing the RFQ details directly to suppliers. However, the Council does not hold a preferred contractors list, as this would not be in line with the Council's procurement procedure. There is provision for the contractor to provide a performance bond or parent company guarantee where appropriate, and this is contained within the Council's procurement procedure, which can be found at Part 5 of the Constitution, providing the appropriate procedures in full and all associated information. the reply I've been given to your question. Actually, I'll pass that round to you so you can. Oh, you've got one. Okay, that's good. The next item is item 5, which is portfolio holder introduction. Portfolio holder for assets. So, welcome to this evening's meeting, and over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, and thank you for inviting me along to address the committee and to give an insight into my portfolio. The assets portfolio is wide-ranging, and I engage with numerous departments across Tendring District Council and work with many different officers of the council. The 3 broad areas I'm responsible for are corporate asset management, information and communication technology, and procurement and social value. The corporate asset management function includes the overview and formulation of the assets management plan, the property strategy and property office procedures. Overview of the property service function, dealing with the council's land and providing property advice and support to service areas. The initiation and authorisation of property transaction and deciding terms for transactions under the threshold for cabinet consideration. Responsibility for public conveniences and street furniture. Development of the carbon neutral plan relating to the council's assets. My portfolio is also responsible for bereavement services. I work with Damien Williams, Andy White, Jenny Wilkinson, Andy Napine and James Hill as lead officers within that area. Together with my cabinet colleagues, we have halted the progression of potential disposal or development action for 69 areas of land owned by the council. I propose that the council focuses on progressing a small number of sites targeted at meeting priorities within the corporate plan. The team will be working on this in due course. A key priority for the year is concluding the disposal of the redundant office site at Wheeley. I have asked officers to consider options in the event that the deal previously agreed cannot be completed quickly. Although the asset management plan and procedures are current, the property strategy is due for review, and I'm keen to get that started as soon as resources allow to ensure alignment with the new corporate plan. Asset team resources are challenged by a significant caseload of routine matters, such as dealing with leases. Some of these matters have been outstanding for a number of years, and I'm keen that these issues are regularised as soon as possible and dealt with as a matter of routine. Officers have been tasked with drafting a new public conveniences strategy. Whilst we all know that this provision is in great demand by our communities, the facilities which we provide are also much abused, and the costs associated in dealing with wanton vandalism detract from our ability to maintain and refurbish them. We need to take a fresh look at the ways that service is provided to ensure that the service can be sustained in the future. I have asked the team to be as creative as possible with the ideas and to see what other councils and providers are doing to enhance and secure public conveniences. During the course of the last year, the transfer of bus shelter responsibilities to Essex County Council has been completed. They propose to use revenue generation to facilitate service improvements. I'm keen to explore solar power options and to harness external funding and partnership approaches to other street furniture with the aim of making our town centres more attractive places. The building services and facilities management function includes dangerous structures, council office buildings and depots policy, facilities management and maintenance cleaning. The dangerous structures function is shared between the council's building control and surveying functions, and the challenge for the coming year is to establish the service within the officer structure to maximise the impact on priorities. We must recognise that offices and other facilities we use come at a significant cost and also contribute a substantial part of the organisation's carbon footprint. Post-COVID, we must look carefully at usage, make sure we make the most of what we have, and to see if there are any beneficial ways to share buildings and facilities with our delivery partners. The bereavement service includes the operation of the crematorium and Tendering's 3 active cemeteries, as well as grounds maintenance in a small number of closed cemeteries. Achieving the standards of ground maintenance that we aspire to in our cemeteries has been difficult. I've been working with my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Barry. I forgot his surname. I've left the word out. Barry. Mick Barry. Councillor Barry, yeah. I'm thinking it's a Christian name. Councillor Mick Barry. I've confused myself. I do apologise, Chair. As I said, I've been working with my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Mick Barry, to resolve the issues that have led to this situation and is a priority for the coming year. We may not be able to control the weather, but establishing sufficient resource levels at an early stage in the year is realistic. Clacton Cemetery is at near capacity, and progress towards implementing the extension project as part of the capital programme is necessary if burials within Clacton are to be continued. Matters relating to planning have been resolved, and a clear look at the project and the resources needed is required. The crematorium is a highly regarded local facility. As we look to the future, we have to make sure that we make financial provision for the life cycle of the machinery and establish working methods that reduce gas consumption now and for the next renewal of that plant. Excuse me a moment. Thank you. I continue to work with the officer team to prepare a bereavement strategy aimed at prioritising these issues and creating a sustainable future for the service. I will now talk about information and communication technology, and I apologise in advance for any use of any techie language. My portfolio is responsible for ICT strategy and operational delivery, ICT contracts, networks, personal IT equipment, applications and system support, data protection and information management, subject access requests, freedom of information requests, and environmental information regulation requests. I'm also responsible for cybersecurity, the internet, telephony technology, and also the digital infrastructure champion. I work with Richard Barrett and John Higgins and a number of specialists within John's team. On a day-to-day basis, our IT team delivers professional, knowledgeable, high-quality support and services for the Council's 726 IT users, as well as residents and customers. The Council's new accessible replacement website went live in January 2023, and work continues to enhance its usability. Key 2024 delivery includes the introduction of new planning services interactive map players called TMAP. Real-time dashboards we've also introduced real-time dashboards which were used in local elections, an area to convey the results of public consultation to improve resident engagement. During the last month, the Tendring website received 70,474 self-service visits, and in the last 12 months, that's from September 23 to September this year, we received 688,758 self-service visits. Our My Tendring self-service portal continues to evolve and improve, and it currently has 46,797 customer self-service accounts, which equates to circa 65% of household penetration. Plans to introduce a range of council tax self-services are well advanced, with anticipated My Tendring Go Live to be announced shortly. With regard to information governance, the team provide day-to-day support and data protection legislative guidance and governance council-wide. We also provide investigative action and guidance when information breaches are reported. We typically respond to about 20 to 30 subject access requests per year, and the Council's received 631 Freedom of Information requests during 2024, which is an increase of 15% since last year. Those statistics do not capture the growing complexity and breadth of the requests, nor the increasing time and resources required to respond to them. The global cybersecurity threat to the UK remains high and comes from a range of hostile actors who target UK government networks and services. Key threats include Russia, China, Iran and North Korean state and state-sponsored groups, financially motivated criminal organisations and hacktivists with political aims. The Council was awarded Cyber Essential Certification status on the 8th of August this year, and at the moment is one of just 21 local authorities working with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, piloting a soon-to-be mandatory cyber assessment framework. Our Microsoft cybersecurity performance score is currently a strong 72%, compared to 49% achieved on average by similarly sized organisations. From a council perspective, it is crucial that each of us ensures we keep our laptop and phone updated with the regularly provided security updates. A key new council IT delivery strand is our in-house developer team, which is already establishing itself as the go-to service for creating new council applications to resolve business issues, and 18 real-time management performance information Microsoft Power BI dashboards have been created. I'll take a breath after that sentence. Examples of these include waste and recycling real-time collection performance, licensing performance and environmental health performance. Additionally, utilising our in-house developed electronic record system, the developer team have digitised planning service microfiche records, saving the council £23,000. More recently, and most excitingly, the developer team is knowledge sharing with fraud and compliance colleagues and developing a data lake of disparate council and publicly available property-based databases to provide a council single data property view. Initially, this data will be used to intelligently enhance council tax and business rates fraud detection, and it will enrich both our data knowledge and management insight and will eventually lead to wider applications across the council. As the portfolio holder responsible for procurement and social value, I work with Lisa Hastings and Karen Hayes and other colleagues in Essex County Council's procurement service and work with them to develop and implement the procurement strategy, to develop and initiate social value policy, and to develop the shared procurement service with partner councils in Essex, and we are responsible also for central purchasing. The procurement partnership between Tendring District Council and Essex County Council began on the 21st of October 2021, and the agreement has been extended to allow the collaboration agreement with the wider Essex procurement partnership to be completed. Formal decisions on these have all been published or are in the public domain, and I'll talk further on this later. The shared procurement resource with Essex County Council and TDC has provided advice and support to colleagues across the council on how to source a wide range of goods and services in accordance with the council procurement procedure rules as contained within the council's constitution. The joint team has embedded a new robust approach to procurement practice with improved documentation using the Proactis e-sourcing tool to ensure visibility of procurement opportunities and robust adoption of procurement process and evaluation principles. Procurement training has been and continues to be rolled out across the organisation, and a new approach to category management has begun to identify key areas of spend where enhanced value for money can be achieved. Tendring District Council remains responsible for the request for quotes process up to £50,000, with the services collating and providing the information and the steps post-quotes being received. The shared service has adapted to feedback throughout its operation, is currently pulling together a questionnaire to ask users how they have found the process, areas where improvements could be made, and feed into the wider shared service approach going forward. Learning and development is key, and ideas for areas to be covered in future training are being captured. Specification writing remains the responsibility of the service purchasing the goods and services. Resources and capacity can only be planned if the procurement project pipeline information is provided up front, and I will be writing to directors and heads of service in this regard and reminding them to ensure that the procurement procedure rules are being followed and maximising opportunities for efficiencies. A small restructure is required with the in-house team to provide some additional administrative capacity, and this will be achieved within the procurement section budget. The housing revenue account has already provided additional capacity to the shared procurement services, and levelling up funding is being requested to do the same to ensure that tight deadlines can be met without continuing to impact on the Council's business as usual agenda. In March 2023, Cabinet approved TDC performing part of a wider partnership of councils to explore the shared procurement service for parts of Essex. This joint shared procurement partnership is now known as the Essex Procurement Partnership. As portfolio holder of Essex, being responsible for procurement, I represent the Council at the Member Advisory Group, which last met in June 2024, and I've been elected as the chair of that group for this coming year up until 2025. The Member Advisory Group consists of an elected member from each local authority partner, providing member oversight of the Essex Procurement Partnership, acting as both a critical friend and champion of the partnership. The Member Advisory Group is an advisory group, and therefore decision-making powers are not devolved for each partner authority. The group will hold responsibility for reviewing the performance of the partnership, providing insight and challenge to the delivery by EPP of its core objectives over the lifetime of the partnership. There are a number of core objectives of the Essex Procurement Partnership which are designed to maximise the opportunities that a shared partnership can bring. These include understanding contract liquidity, undertaking sourcing activity, introducing category management, creating frameworks, developing professionalism of procurement in each partner, growing procurement and market knowledge, supporting robust contract management, and also developing social value. The Member Advisory Group works closely with the Strategic Officer Group, with information flows between the two groups enabled by senior officers. TDC is represented on the Officer Group by Lisa Hastings, who has been working on the collaboration agreement, the procurement strategy, rules and social value policy documentation. Tendering District Council had already identified a number of specific improvement activities to be delivered, and these have been considered against the offer of a wide partnership sharing resource and are now incorporated into the EPP prioritised objectives. These include developing a common procurement strategy, a review of procurement procedure rules, ensuring practices are up to date with legislation, national guidance and best practice. Also, that they're up to date with contract management skills and the production of a social value policy and evaluation approach. A lot of work has been going on behind the scenes, and the collaboration agreement and procurement strategy are being finalised for Cabinet decisions in November this year. Further training is being pulled together to align with the Procurement Act 2023, which was due to go live at the end of October this year, but has been delayed to February next year to review the government's national procurement policy statement. Our model for social value continues to develop, and I could take all night referring to our new proposed model, which we are using for the waste contract, but I'll save this for a further session, which I'm sure members will be interested in. I've explored the model and can see real positives for the benefits which can be realised. The social value to be extracted will be monitored through contract management, and the data captured by the procurement team will be reported. The themes, outcomes and measures, commonly known as TOMs, have been mapped against our own corporate plan priorities, having a focus on areas within our district, but with the flexibility to go wider into Essex and beyond being determined by each specification. Chair, that gives a fairly comprehensive insight into my portfolio. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to working with the members of this committee for the benefit of the residents and visitors of Tendring. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Probably the most detailed report we've had on various portfolio hosts. So thank you very much for that. I wonder, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would add to that, your comments there. Councillor Cots, I'd thank you for your report. That was very thorough. I learned a lot from what you said there, so thank you. And yeah, lots and lots of questions, to be honest, but I'll pause and give other people a chance. So, but I was really glad to hear you mention Wheelie offices. I'm the ward councillor for Wheelie and Tendring, and it is a constant thorn in my side every time I come out of Crow Lane and see the empty offices there. I receive many reports from neighbours about the rats that are seen running around the site, which I've had to report to TDC officers about clearing the site. But it's a very sad looking site as it is. Now, you know, I'm glad to hear that you say that you're going to review the contract, because the contract, I believe, was signed by the previous administration, and yet there doesn't seem to be any further way forward. Perhaps if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit more detail on where we are with that, because it must be costing the council money for the building to be there, and you know where we are with regards to the contract, because I know that there were originally a number of gifted houses that were going to come as part of that contract, and obviously the delay there is of concern. And if you can update me there, I would like to come back to you on that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, if I may, I think I'll refer that answer to officers to supply that information. Some of that may be commercially sensitive, and I don't think we could specifically air this here in a public meeting. So I'm quite happy to get officers to answer those specific comments that you've asked within your question. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, Chair, if I may.
Could we have the replies circulated to all committee members, please? Thank you.
If I may, I mean, do we have any idea of when that contract is going to be reviewed, so we're in a position, because although, you know, I won't go into any commercially sensitive information then, you know, it is a real concern. You know, the question has to be, how much money are we losing? We've got a site which potentially is deteriorating, and you know, is there something else that we can do with that site in the interim? I mean, I am aware of many of the details of that contract, plus also the reasons potentially why that is not coming forward and actually being developed or being finalised. So I think it's a really, really important thing that we come back, and perhaps can we get a time span of when we can get an answer?
The advice I'm being given is that it's some of these issues some of the questions that you ask are still very, very sensitive around some of the issues around contracts, but I will get answers to you, written to you, once I've got those specific answers to the questions that you've asked.
Thank you. I've got one more question regarding Wheelie, if that's okay, but it's not regarding the Wheelie offices, it's regarding Wheelie crematorium. A few years ago, during the previous administration, there was a failure of the burner and the plant machinery, which resulted in Wheelie being offline for some significant months, which caused a lot of heartache for many residents, and it also lost the the council a considerable amount of income, which I believe is circa 600,000. New plant machinery has gone in there. One of the things that I always wanted to get an answer, and I don't think I ever got an answer, was how did we end up in that situation? And are you clearly satisfied that we have the expertise on this council that is able to determine, understand the maintenance requirements for that equipment? So do we have qualified people to determine the engineering reports that would be obtained on regular planned maintenance?
I am satisfied that the equipment we've got now is good and working well. I think the issue for us is not specifically about the capacity of people within the council being able to call on those people who can give us that information. I think that's an important thing. I think the other important thing is we know that that cremation equipment has only got a certain amount of life, a certain period of life. So what we need to do is to factor in over a period of time what we're going to do to be able to replace any plant or equipment which needs to be replaced over a period of time. I'm told that these things have a life between 8 and 10 years, and therefore what the council needs to do as part of its forward planning is to factor those costs and resources into replacing that plant over a period of time. I think that's the most important thing we need to do.
Thank you. I would agree with all of that. I think it is sort of up to 10 years. The question I would ask of you is, you may already be aware, are you aware of the circumstances, how the failure happened last time? I know that they failed prematurely, and to coin that well-used phrase, have lessons been learned?
Well, I think those things happened prior to my tenure in this position. I'm hopeful that the plant that we've got now, that a failure is unlikely to happen. I think the reason the failures happened before is because the equipment was so old and not maintained maybe to the level it should have been. But the new equipment we've got, I understand, is working very well, and I don't foresee any breakdowns, and I certainly hope it doesn't happen.
So you just said something there that the plant wasn't maintained to the level it should have been. So is that because I was never given that answer? Yeah, I know that. I absolutely understand. This was before. Right. Okay. Because it was never understood, or never fed back as to why the failure. But if you're, I don't think it was that old. It actually failed prematurely, and the maintenance was always the issue that I wanted to get on. Was it a failure of maintenance that led to that failure? And that's the bit. So it's reassurance that that's not going to happen again. So I don't want to be here in another 6 years' time and find out that we're in exactly the same position. That's the thing. And if you see what I'm saying?
Thank you. I can reassure the committee that the equipment that we've recently purchased is from the market leader and is being maintained in accordance with their instructions. Previous equipment was bought from a company that went bankrupt, and the equipment hadn't reached the end of its full life as you'd expect it. It wasn't designed appropriately, and that company also didn't maintain it as well as we would have hoped. So all of those things were true, and combined to the equipment failing before it should have done, I don't anticipate that happening again.
That's fine. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your questions and your answers on that. Just to touch back on the subject of wheelie, one of the things we've got coming up is we've got asset management and arrangements as one of our task and finish groups. So obviously you're going to send your response to members of this committee, as you said. Obviously anyone who's sitting on there that's coming in as to be part of that task and finish group, it would also be good if they could receive the same. Obviously, that says, I know Peter has shown an interest. If you would like to sit on that task and finish group, you're more than welcome. I know you're working on others, but if you'd like to be part of that, you're more than welcome.
I'm more than happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you. And it's something that Councillor Cousins has kindly offered to chair. It is something that has been of a concern to me for quite some time, as I know some officers are aware, because it's my understanding that Wheelie standing empty is costing us around 5,500 per month. So it is something we do need to tackle. Anyway, moving on from that, do we have any questions from any other of our committee this evening for the portfolio holder? He's a repeat offender, you know. Peter.
I did honestly wait to see if there was any more hands going up before mine, but as there's none, I will just ask. You know, as a businessman myself, I'm very interested in procurement, and procurement is an important function of the council. I'm glad to see that we're working in conjunction with Essex County Council, and there's best practice and best buying. I think that if you've got a big buying group, obviously you get better value for money. But my question is, to be honest, I'm focused on tendering and tendering businesses. So and I know that there are rules around sort of best value, etc. But is there anywhere in our contracts or weighting in terms of how we choose? Is there anything that will prioritise tendering businesses, particularly small, medium enterprises in tendering? And that's whether we issue the contract direct ourselves, sub 50,000, and if it's above 50, then it's being handled by Essex County Council. Is there anything that Essex County Council would do to prioritise tendering businesses when they're handling the contract?
I'll ask Lisa Hastings to come in a moment, but I think the main issue is getting clarity so that, small and medium enterprises, local businesses are able to compete for contracts. And I think that's the thing that needs to be done most, is actually making sure that the procurement rules, what needs to be done, is clear and precise so that small and medium enterprises can actually take part in the process of trying to win contracts for procurement. But I'll hand over to Lisa to talk specifically about what can be done, what is able to be done with regards local businesses also were part of the Essex contract as well.
So it's been a requirement since 2012, I think, for local authorities to give consideration to what we call social value factors. So that's always been a requirement. We, over the last few years, have been focusing a bit more on trying to get social value out of our contracts. We've had a number of contracts recently which have gone out where I think there's been 10, maybe even 20% given in the weighting to social value factors. They have to be included up front so that any suppliers going through the tender exercise know what we're being asked to. We're asking from them. Some services have had mixed responses with regards to those social value experiences, as we say. Councillor Cox made reference to the development of a social value policy, which we've been working on together with colleagues over in Essex. And the proposal at the moment, obviously still subject to approval by Cabinet, is that you would look to a maximum of 20% for social value on contracts with a value of over 100,000 and over. That's not 100,000 per year, that's a contract value of 100, so 25 per year, 4 years it would apply. And The process as identified is that we must make sure, and it's a legal requirement, you have to make sure that the social value that you are seeking complies with the relevance of the contract. So there has to be some connection, and there's been this exercise undertaken where there's Essex use, I think it's 54 TOMs, what they're called, themes, outcomes and measures. And there's an exercise which has been undertaken mapping those against our corporate priorities. So once adopted by Cabinet, the proposal would be that for any services going out to tender for a contract with a value of more than 100,000, would have to identify the relevant TOMs to go in that specification, and then it would be scored accordingly through the evaluation process. So what we're doing is actually sort of putting into a policy what we're already required to do, but actually just to make it clearer, and actually to also provide some some IT solution, I don't know what that is, where we can easily record this information and then check that the contractors has also delivered it.
Thank you. Thank you. If a point of clarification then. So you mentioned contracts over 100,000, I think it was. But what about contracts sub that? Is it the policy still going to apply to that, so we can prioritise tendering businesses? And I'll just add another question, which is probably Councillor Cott's again, which is an important thing with all of procurement, is engagement with local businesses. Many businesses will find out about contracts after the event, and they've missed out. So what action we may have in place, or what action are we going to put in place to actually communicate with local businesses and perhaps have sort of meet the buyer events and things like that? Thank you.
So a number of things there is in relation to subcontractors. I think you said subcontractors, didn't you?
Contracts not subcontractors, sorry. Contracts less than 100,000.
Oh, okay,
That's what
sorry,
I meant.
I thought you meant subcontractors. I'll answer the question on subcontractors anyway. Once you go, a contractor gets a piece of work with us, it is a standard clause that any provisions that applied to the main contractor apply to subcontractors too. So that would go through that. At the moment, there is not any consideration, again, this is going to be subject to Cabinet policy being approved. The proposal is that it would be 100,000. There's always you can put flexibility into anything, and there is something in the documentation which says that could be applied if you wanted to, but we have to bear in mind the amount of work that's involved in monitoring social value. So that's something to bear in mind. The other thing that was mentioned by Councillor Cots was that the government are reviewing their national procurement policy statement, which is embedded into the Procurement Act 2023. So whatever we do as a local authority in public sector, we have to follow the government's national procurement strategy. So there is something in there about social value already, which was approved sort of around the summertime, but that's being reviewed by the current government, and we will need to follow that as well. So, if things change, then we have to adapt to that as well. And then the other question, which I've now forgotten. Oh, so you can log on to Contracts Finder and to be notified of procurements coming in a specific subject matter. So that's how local business can do it. When I worked for a previous authority and was responsible for procurement, we did a number of sort of business breakfasts and things with local suppliers, and it's something that the procurement strategy that we've been working on will indicate how can we reach out and make it easier for SMEs to bid for work. I tend to find that it's quite daunting for a small business to apply for work, but once they've done it once, then they've got all the templates there really to be able to go through that. So yeah, there's things that we can do, and we're looking to include it within the revised strategy going forward.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I will come back just a couple of points there. You said that you might feel sort of extra work that it's going to create if we put the prioritising tendering businesses on the smaller contracts. I'd just be interested to know how much extra work would it be to put a line in the contract to say that 20%, you'd be given an extra 20% weighting if you're a local business, and obviously the if more local businesses actually apply for these contracts and win these contracts, a £10,000 contract, £20,000 contract for a small business in tendering is huge, and that could, as a small business owner myself, that's a lot of money, and that can mean the difference of even survival, maybe recruiting extra staff, and obviously it's boosting the local economy. So all I would ask, I know you're looking at the strategy, is to please bear in mind that the massive difference that it makes to local the local business community. And just one more comment, and it is always a difficult one. It's easy to say, well, businesses can log on to the portal. The question, one of my favourite questions is, how do you know what you don't know? And if people don't know to log on, how do they know when these contracts are actually going to be there? So it is a constant drip feed of information to encourage the business community somehow to actually engage with those portals. Thank you.
Okay, can I just add? I think you're right, Peter. I think one of the issues, as I said earlier, is about clarity and maybe helping small businesses to actually educate themselves with it about the process. And I think there's something that we can do in terms of looking at that locally. And we'll also talk to our partners in Essex as part of the procurement partnership to see if there's anything further we can do to make small businesses aware of the fact that they can get involved.
First of all, with regards to the question you asked me about why is it extra work, I said about the monitoring the social value being delivered through the contracts. That's where the additional work comes from. So we have to be proportionate with regards to the council's resources and monitoring. That's where I meant about the additional work. As indicated by Councillor Cots, there's different thresholds for tenders. So tenders for up to £50,000 are go through a request for quote process. So that's different to the full-blown tender. So we do and I'm going to use the sort of phrase lighter touch, I suppose, for lower values. The other thing as well is there's been and there's going to be more changes through the Procurement Act with regards to councils are required to notify contracts. They're calling it a notifiable contract. I think that's the term they're using for contracts of 30,000 and above. So local authorities are going to have to put prior notice of those up on the government's contracts finder, in effect. I think the name's changing, but essentially that's what it is. And that is where any local business that is interested in work through the public sector should be looking, because we're under a requirement to publish it there. So, that's the bit that we need to do. We need to educate businesses to say that we have to put it there. That's where the information is going to be. I've not personally used it, but somebody quite close to me has. My husband is a small business. You get emails when something's put on there within your sector. So, that's how you get notified, a bit like looking for a job through Indeed or something like that.
Thank you. And just one more thing, Chair. I don't know, once you've finished your, you're looking at the policy for procurement, and particularly with local businesses, is such an important issue, something I'm passionate about. Is this something that you intend to feed back to full council, or you know, can that be a recommendation of this committee that it's fed back? Because I think it's hugely important and it mustn't be undervalued, the work that you're doing on this.
That work will have to come back because it has to go through the decision process anyway. So it will definitely come back. But I mean, if this committee specifically wants something, and I'm sure that could be accommodated, but it needs to go through the decision-making process anyway, and it's due to come back in November, I think, isn't it?
Will it go to cabinet? But I don't know whether it will go to full council.
I wouldn't see that there's I don't think that it's part of the policy framework of the council, so it wouldn't necessarily go to full council. It doesn't stop the portfolio holder giving a briefing to full council or making a statement to full council, but it wouldn't necessarily go there.
If it would help, Chairman, if this committee requests that, I'm happy to do so.
I'd leave that to the chair to perhaps put it to this committee to see where we say. I mean, I would like that because I'd just like to have it fed back, give us the opportunity to look at it, and to you know to help push the information to local businesses as well. But it is important, and again to our local economy, you know, the things that changes people's lives are jobs, and that we can help with that with our procurement. Thank you.
So, are we happy for that to be just be a cabinet member's announcement, wouldn't it, full council? Mm-hmm. Are we happy for it to be that?
I've just checked the constitution, and it actually requests that the procurement strategy, including a social value policy, does go to full council. Although it's not part of the legal policy framework, but it's been done here as a matter of local choice. So it would go to cabinet for approval onto recommendation onto full council. The other thing I would say is that the sort of model that we're proposing to use is the model that's already being used across other local authorities. So, you know, it's tried and tested. I feel that possibly if you were going to consider what added value could this committee have, it might be looking in, say, you know, 6 months after it's been in place to have a look then whether there's been any difference because of it. You know, I was just, you know, thinking out loud that you might want to look at that once it has been approved. It's probably the thing that's going to, you know, get support across the chamber to be able to move forward on.
I would encourage that, Chair, to look at it again 6 months after the strategy comes into place. But also I'd be looking for a statement from the portfolio holder, particularly on the effect that this new policy will have in helping small local businesses in tendering, please. Thank you.
Okay, we all happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Is there any questions from anyone else? No? Okay then. So what I propose to do next is take item 7 before 6, because Richard's waiting patiently. And item 7 is report of the Assistant Director of Finance and IT, financial outturn update. This would also mean if there is anything that does flag up in Richard's report, we can maybe touch on it in the work programme. So it's over to you then. And obviously, thanks Peter for coming along to the meeting tonight and answering the questions, and for bringing your officer team with you, who I see are heading for the door. Over to you then, Richard.
I shall start. Thank you, Chairman. So yes, this is the report that went to Cabinet back in July, and it's built on the back of the much more. This is quite detailed, but it's actually built on a more detailed report that the portfolio holder agreed a little bit earlier with that. So this sets out a summarised position of that more fuller report that was considered. So hopefully, if you happy to just chat through it, and if there's anything that sort of springs to mind or anything that crops up, if you're happy to stop me and we can touch on any points you want to raise. So the key highlight is a favourable variance at the end of 23-24 of just over £1.8 million, and so the detailed report that the PFH would have agreed has that background to it. It's a real mixed bag of variances in terms of what contributes to that one, but one of the biggest items was a much more favourable outcome in terms of business rate income, which was for a number of reasons. So I wanted to go into detail, but if you want me to, we can touch on those. But £1.8 million was the variance, and then it was so there was an allocation. The portfolio did make a recommended allocation because £259,000 of the overall outturn for at the end of 23-24 related to surplus on car parking. So the surplus on car parking, the decision was to actually reinvest that into the service. We've spoken in the past about fees and charges, that fees and charges shouldn't be set to, you can only recover costs in terms of your fees and charges. So the parking income or the parking service did generate additional net income of £259,000. So in line with that requirement to not charge more than the service cost, you recycle that back round, and the proposal is to reinvest that back into parking. So once you start stripping that out, there's a balance of 1.570 million, and there was a number of recommendations that were set out within the appendices that come to this report, which we can have a look at in a mo. Fundamentally, what the point when we got to the end of 23-24 was we had the 24-25 budget agreed in February. We had a Q3 report back in March, and it's looking what's upcoming, what are our challenges financially, and I think it was what we'd experienced, and we had issues like homelessness. And we had other issues that had emerged during the year. So the opportunity was, what do we do with this £1.5 million outturn? And it was actually trying to support those ongoing costs. Homelessness is demanded service. Yes, you can do prevention actions, but fundamentally there's a significant spend in terms of homelessness as one example. So there was a significant reinvestment back into what we're going to be faced with quite naturally anyway, almost the unavoidable items for 24-25. So that investment was made, and also at the same time the opportunity was once that was funded, there was an opportunity to bring money together along with other funding that sat. We had the outturn for 22-23. I don't know if you recall, when we got to the end of 22-23, the administration at the time didn't make any commitments against that money. They set it aside for the new administration coming in May, so that was there as well. So a decision was made by Cabinet to bring that together and create a corporate investment fund, and there was 3 allocations from that fund at the same time when this report was done, which was the putting money aside for the care line review, putting the money aside to develop or to establish a delivery team, project delivery team, and also to support the capital regeneration project over in Dovercourt. So there's additional funding there, which left about just over £2.4 million available in the corporate investment fund, which is sitting there for further allocation as we go through the year. In terms of what's upcoming, because again this is the outturn of 23-24. Hot on the heels, we've got a report going to Cabinet in October, which is the Q1 position. It's more the first third of the year, which we'll be reporting to Cabinet shortly, which will touch on all those issues. So it's anything emerging, new, anything that we know about already that we put extra funding in. Is that right? Have we got that right in terms of the money that's been added into those budgets? But also to develop the forecast. I know we've had conversation in the past. Now you spoke about the forecast and the budget setting just after Christmas as part of your involvement in agreeing the 4-5 or supporting the 4-5 budget. So we're updating the forecast as well. So that will have a number of items to it. It will bring in a cost pressure review again, and it'll also bring in the first iterations of the savings plan. So the report going to October will start to sort of explain what's behind that one. And then the forecast. We talked about extending the forecast period as well. We started off with a 10-year plan. I think we had sort of 3 years left when we set the 4-5 budget. So again, it's looking to extend that back out to see what challenges we're faced with going forward. And just sort of scribbling down, there's lots in terms of recommendations with the funding that was set aside from the £1.5 million outturn position. There was a lot of delegations, a lot of flexibility built into those recommendations to enable decisions to be made on the back of that money, such as the money set aside for the tender of the waste contract, the seasonal grounds maintenance and cleaning costs, a number of things as you see in your agenda tonight that was there. So that kind of sort of sets the scene to give us that flexibility going forward. I'm just scrolling down to see if there's anything worth highlighting, or let's just have a scroll down and see if there's anything in there. But hopefully that has covered the essential points of the outturn position for 3-4. Yes, it does. So I've kind of a bit of a whirlwind as always. With these things, we can go into sort of 3 hours of detail, or trying to sort of a quick whirlwind. I know it's one of those subjects that hopefully we're into that kind of budget setting season now, so you'll probably see a lot of finance coming your way through the next sort of next few meetings. I know we have that important meeting, I think just before Christmas or just after Christmas, in terms of that much more detailed deep dive into the forecast. So hopefully that's a quick but sort of like helpful summary of the outturn. But is that okay? Is there anything else that you want me to sort of cover in more detail before questions or as part of questions?
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anyone else have any comments? Peter.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you said it yourself, really. That was a whirlwind tour of where we are, and we have to accept what a great officer we have and rely upon you in advising us. And the question I asked earlier, or stated earlier, how do we know what we don't know? It's always asking that question that we don't actually know. Which stone do we actually lift to find where the problem is? And I don't really know the full details of Thurrock, but when other councils around, we never ever. That's the real purpose of a committee like this. Is the scrutiny is such a valuable tool for the council is to look at that. So it's very difficult. I'm acutely aware of of the great work that you do for the council, and we're reassured to have someone with your experience doing that. And our council's compared to many across the country, in a very, very healthy situation. Nevertheless, there are still challenges. You mentioned Careline. That's something that's being looked at, which is extremely worrying for many. We've had some good things. Inflation, that's dropped, so that should have an impact. So I don't think I've really sort of got any questions other than the fact that I just wanted to say that I'm satisfied with what I hear, but I don't know the detail. I think you said there's another point where you're going to go into the detail. I think it's the detail that would really mean that this committee could then be fully reassured that we've asked all the correct questions to find out if there are any issues. And but you're telling us that there's no stone that we need to look under where there's a problem, is what I'm hearing, and I'm quietly happy with that. Thank you.
No, thanks for that. I think Councillor Harris, that's a really important point. I think one of the things I'm very nervous of is we've spoken about, well, there's two things. When I say that actually when you talk about other councils, I think what we've got, and you've got to look at the wider governance arrangements as well, what sort of delegations is given to the Section 151 officer. I think we've got it about right. We've got flexibility, but we haven't got this crazy level of delegation where I can go away and do what I want without any reference back to members. I think we've got a good, strong governance framework as well. But I think more importantly, or equally as important, I think, is the point around that independent view. Now, I'm very conscious of the fact that with the external audit delays, we've had no commentary from our external auditors for 4 years now. So what the current arrangements are is there's a backstop date where our outgoing auditors will have to provide you with a value for money commentary on a council's affairs. So that's 2021 accounts, but they're going to bring it up to date. So they're going to give you a commentary shortly about our financial resilience, our financial forecasting. Are we in a good place? Are we managing the risks correctly? So you've got my view on that one, but I equally want that independent view because it actually brings a whole new kind of scope to that, and hopefully some recommendations as well. I mean, we're not going to be perfect, are we? But hopefully we're in a really decent place. So yeah, we're not a million miles away now. A few weeks now, and you'll get a detailed report about that commentary, and then actually. It's like buses, isn't it? You've had nothing for 4 years, you're going to get outgoing auditors, and you get another one in February for our new auditors, which is fantastic because you've got both sets of auditors. You're going to give you an independent position and view on our value for money use resources position. So I'm looking forward to that, and that will make its way to all members, hopefully as quick as we can.
That's great news. And so, will that come back to this committee as well as full council, or?
Yeah, audit committee, but we intend to share that outcome, that report, to all members independently anyway. So you get a copy of that as members. I think it's one of the most important reports that we get. So the idea is we'll share that, and then if there's anything in there that you want to bring back to this committee, and hopefully that'd be fine. We can have that conversation, and you can have your natural budgetary cycle anyway. And by the time that comes through, it's only a couple of weeks before you have that more detailed budget review anyway. So it should all dovetail in around the Christmas time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, anybody else with any questions? I've got one that I was looking at, and I'm not sure if it's a decision, a question for yourself, or it's more of a political decision. That's on page 55, about midway down, and I'll read. I won't read the whole paragraph, but I'll read part of it. And it refers to citizens' advice tendering, which is the CAT reference. It says members may recall the decision made by Cabinet on the 21st of July 2023, where support to CAT was agreed in the 2023-24, whilst a wider review of grant funding was undertaken to inform the decision in the 2024-25. At the present time, and following on from subsequent reports to Cabinet, the most recent of which was on the 19th of April 2024, this review remains ongoing. It is therefore proposed to continue the financial support to CAT on broadly the same terms as 2023-24. This ongoing review, that troubles me because it seems to be something that's ticking over. You may recall at Cabinet, I think Cabinet decided is around 25,000 for a PSPO for Harwich because the review hadn't been undertaken, so that was passed on. So it concerns me that these reviews seem to be continually ongoing and no real action. And obviously, the other side, when we're giving money to organisations such as CAT, it concerns me how much input, control or auditing do we have over the money that's being given.
Yes, that's really timely in as much that Cabinet agreed the associated review was finalised with the report to Cabinet last week. So on Friday they had the external funding report, which was the outcome of that review. So that's gone through now. So that will inform. So it kind of set a high-level framework in which is accepting funding, but also give funding out to external bodies as well. So it's a very high-level framework and a flow chart in there as well. So what the report was saying is at the next anniversary of giving out external funding, then you need to refer to this high-level framework that was agreed by Cabinet on Friday. It's also going to be supported by a much more detailed external funding policy, which the Cabinet have asked to be developed by the Audit Committee as well, so the Audit Committee with oversight as well. So basically, the next anniversary of this funding will be subject to this new approach that was agreed on Friday. And interesting enough, and I found it an interesting point as well, when you look at the flow chart, it talks about it's about what you're giving funding for. And one of the first questions, one of the earlier questions is around, is it procurement? So is the council actually giving a grant out as like I call the old-fashioned grant, where it's actually supporting a local group, or is it actually buying something? Because you tend to find actually give a grant out, but in effect it's a service provision. You are buying a service from a local organisation. So it's very much looking at that as well. So it was an interesting topic with that final report to Cabinet last week. So as I said, going forward, this deals with it in 4 or 5, I should say. And it also brings in some best value guidance as well around notice periods. Because if you give funding to an organisation and there's the expectation that it will continue, there's some requirements you've got to meet in terms of consultation and notice periods as well. So I think it's kind of tidied up, for want of a better phrase, the 4-5 position. So the ongoing position from the 1st of April next year will be subject to this new policy or process agreed from Cabinet last week.
Thank you very much for that. That explains it. Does anyone else have any questions?
Just on that issue, it might be useful for you to be aware that the Community Leadership Overview and Scrutiny Committee has itself put into its work programme a review of where Cabinet has got to in relation to grant giving by the council. So it is picking up the baton, if you like, on that issue, and just wanting to make sure that gap analysis work and the like has been done by the council in its grant giving.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Richard. If no one else has got any questions, and then we can move to our recommendations, which are on page 48. Would you like me to go through the recommendations, or would you like me to move them as block? It's page 48.
Yeah, Chairman, actually, I think it's on page 45 as for us. Cabinet had the
on
recommendations
page
48. So yours is to receive it, ask the questions, and determine whether there's anything that you want to send back to Cabinet for further thought.
I've got it. I was only a couple of pages out. So does anyone have any thoughts, comments, or recommendations that they'd like to send back to Cabinet?
Chair, if I just say, I mean, the Cabinet on the 20th of December will be putting forward its draft budget proposals. So in and around that time, in preparation for your January meeting, it wouldn't be unusual for the committee to receive a briefing from the Section 151 officer on where things are. And so that might be something that through the work programme that we can just pick up, just to make sure that you're as best formed as possible. You will also have been invited, albeit that it's later than that, for the Ian Fifield training session on the 22nd of January. Again, just to make sure that you have as many opportunities as possible to understand the dark arts of local government finance through whatever means that we can put in front of you.
Chair, and also has been confirmed by the Lord Dark Angel, Richard Barrett there, that of the dark arts, that we're going to have an audit, outside audit as well. So I think that's important that comes back at the appropriate time, so that we can examine that and then just confirm that. We may have questions on the results of that audit as well. So I think it's key that we get that back. So whether that's an action point or not, or we state that we reserve our right to sort of question when that comes back.
Chair, but it's primarily will go to audit because it falls within its remit, although the use of resources section will no doubt, he says, be something that is picked up as part of the Section 1511 officer. I'll give him his correct title rather than the one you used. In his briefing to you in readiness for your January cycle of review of the budget, etc., by Cabinet. So I would imagine that that would be part of that process.
Can we, well, obviously, like we're being asked, you know, it's part of our sort of reassurance that that's happened. So I think it is important that we get that. So I don't think we should assume. I think we should just ask for it and say that we want to see it.
I'm happy that we can put that forward as a recommendation.
Yes, Chairman, I think we can incorporate that into the work programme, and we're coming on to that any second now.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, that's it then. So thanks very much for your time, Richard. You can stay if you like. No, that's fine. That's fine. So our next item is item 6, which is a review of the work programme, which begins on page 27.
And Chairman, as you're turning to that page, also put out onto the table for committee members is the report that was considered by Cabinet on Friday, which has Cabinet's response because it was approved in the form set out in the papers put around the table this evening. The portfolio holder for housing and planning's response to your recommendations that arose out of the Spendles inquiry that you undertook at your last meeting. And on the third page of that, it sets out the approach, and you'll see there about 2/3 of the way down that page the expectations in relation to the Chief Executive's formal review of the unauthorised expenditure and the circumstances around that, and also the adoption by Cabinet that portfolio holders should review with corporate directors the performance and project management of all existing projects within their respective portfolios and report their findings to the leader of the council, the Resources, Services and Overview and Scrutiny Committee, together with such additional actions as the leader wishes to undertake in response. So as I say, that was adopted by Cabinet on Friday, and you need to read effectively the report that was circulated with your agenda together with that response from Cabinet on Friday.
Does anyone have any comments on that response from Cabinet? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just to get this right, this is obviously discussing the Spendles sort of overspend. When we had the leader of the council here and the portfolio here, we had a number of questions that we sort of held back because we were waiting for the investigation. So are we saying that this is the result of that investigation? It's not. So it's not. So that is still going to come back to us.
My understanding is the investigation is still ongoing.
It is, right, because it doesn't give us the detail of how it happened, and so that's still coming. Okay, thank you. No questions.
Yeah. My only concern is obviously they've agreed to, I think it's point B, portfolio holders should review with their corporate directors the performance and project management of all existing projects within their respective portfolios and report their findings to the leader of the council, the Resources and Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee, together with such additional actions as leader wishes to undertake in response. We don't have a time scale for that. as we've heard today, things like wheelie are ticking on. They're costing us thousands a month. We know Spendles, I think, has cost us over 22,000 a month because of the position it's in. I'm concerned about the CCTV in the town centre, and so it ticks on. So Mike, I think it's good that they're reviewing it. I'm pleased with that, but I'm concerned that there's no time scale to these reviews. I don't know what other members think. Peter, it looks like I'm a bit of a warrior and no one else is.
I think with a danger of anything like this, or I think there's some reassurance needed to be given to members that the can's not going to be kept on kicking down the road, because if you kick it down the road, obviously, as you've pointed out, it's costing the council money and therefore residents money. So I would look to I would agree with you. I think there does need to be some form of date given when there's going to be some answers on this to avoid unnecessary costs being incurred. And if there's a legitimate reason why decisions can't be made within a set time, then I'd like to hear it, really.
Is there any way we can respond to that?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. You can pick that up again and indicate that you would like a time frame. Your next meeting is on the 17th of December, so in time for that would be perhaps the end of November that review was undertaken. I'm only putting that out there. You might have a different time frame in your mind.
Well, I think if it was able to be discussed here at the next meeting, then that sort of really does bring it forward to the earliest opportunity, and I think it gives Cabinet time, hopefully time, to have investigated and come, what you're asking, and if they can't, through some legitimate reason that I can't think of at this moment in time, then it would only be fair and reasonable for them to come back and say the reasons why they can't match that. We can't be unreasonable, but we also need to be quite assertive and firm, because obviously there's costs being incurred for residents.
Is there some response we can come up with that? I mean, I think the other part of it is if there are quite a number of different portfolio holder projects, surely we can see some of them. Bernard.
Thank you. Yeah, this Spendles, I'm not too familiar with it, but what I've read, how on earth, when this first came about, why wasn't it properly managed in the first place from the time that it was first devised to the point you have now? Yeah, that is something that I'm sort of wondering about, that somehow it's been totally mismanaged. Somewhere along the lines, somebody hasn't followed it through with a proper management, a proper control on expenses and the prices. I mean, one of them, I can't understand, £60,000 for 5 fire doors? What on earth? Something is wrong. That's £12,000 a door or more. Something isn't quite right there. So whoever put the tender in and the costing on that, it's gone way over budget, obviously. Obviously, it needs to be completed because it is a good thing. I'm not saying it's not, but it is. But again, obviously, questions have to be asked as to why. Yeah, and I understand there is this review, and obviously this has got to go back to how many years was this first devised? I don't know. I mean, this is because I'm pretty new to this, but the review is going to be. I'm not quite sure how long it will take. Obviously, the sooner the answers come back in, the better. But yeah, I mean, how it ever came about, I'll never know. And maybe people here may know. Yeah.
I think that's why the Chief Executive has instigated the investigation he has, because from what I understand, it's not one mistake. There are various errors or indiscretions within it, and that's the idea of it. My fear is that it turns into one of the public inquiries that you see on the news that's been running for years. That's what we don't want to happen, because it needs to be resolved, because if there's an error in there, we could be repeating that error in other areas. And that, I think that's the concern that I've got. And obviously, we still don't have a completion date for Spendles, which means it's still ticking on month after month, costing us more. And where the cost is coming is when I talk about 22,800 a month, that's actually the cabinet figure that's what they would save if it was operational. So if it's not operational, it's costing us that per month. That's my concern. I think we do need some answers. That's what we're here for. We're here to put a little bit of pressure on and say, come along. Hang on a minute.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. Is it still ongoing while the review's happening, or has it been paused?
My understanding is it's ongoing, but we still don't have a completion date. We had a decision go through the other week for IT on it, so money's still being spent on it, but we still don't have a conclusion to the investigation.
Chairman, I mean, I would imagine that fairly soon, because Cabinet is meeting on the 18th of October, that a completion date will air, at least at that point. So I would expect that some of those answers will start to appear. The investigation by the Chief Executive, I don't think are going to run as long as a number of the public inquiries that you reference. And I think there's an eagerness to conclude the review as soon as practicable. And I'm certainly aware that the messaging around authorisation of expenditure has been delivered very firmly to senior managers across the organisation. So there should be no ambiguity in the minds of any officer of the council now to the requirements of the financial procedure rules as they apply to contracts that they're involved in. The issue, I think, Councillor Goldman mentions, how on earth something has happened. Hopefully, we will start to get some detail of that as the Chief Executive's formal review concludes. But I think the issue that you were honing in on is the potential for other projects in the organisation to be so affected. I think you were at the point of saying something around a reference back to Cabinet to ensure that by your time of your next meeting, you were in a position to have an update on that, whether that's a complete update or an almost complete update. So if that's your decision, then we can certainly push back to Cabinet and ask that question that's your expectation.
Well, that's my personal view. I think we need it. I'm not sure apply the pressure as the word, but we need to make it clear that we do expect these issues to be looked at and tackled.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all share Councillor Goldman's concerns, and we're all dying to read the report when it comes, and we've probably got lots and lots of questions there. I think, I would like to be in a position where, clearly by the end of this calendar year, that we have answers on Spendles and we have answers on all the other projects that you've mentioned as well, so that we go into a new year with a new budget without these hanging over us, really. So I think it would not be a good idea to carry these costs over into a new year. So I'm sure, I'm certain the Cabinet are doing everything they possibly can to ensure that happens. and our job really is to challenge them if we believe that the can is being kicked down the road. So I think the term often used by Councillor Stevenson is this committee is a friendly criticism, if you like, or critical friend. That's the phrase. Sorry, critical friend. And I think that that's what we need to be, and we do need to be assertive and say that's what we would like to see. And if they say, well, yeah, we can't manage that by the 17th of November, I think you said, and by the point of our next meeting, then they need to come back and inform us why. But would like to see it pushed.
That's my view. I mean, we spoke the other day, and one of the things I spoke about at full council when we spoke about possible changes to local government is, do you have the resources to do this? And the response I received was, yes, I'm confident we have. Well, do we have the resources to do this? Because I'm beginning to worry now. We look at things and things are sliding behind time. Things that should have been addressed a long time ago. That's one issue, but if there's an error there, as I said before, we're repeating it and we don't even know it. So I think we should have something back. Ideally, it's not a mammoth task by one person. Each portfolio holder has only got certain projects under. So we should see a large number of those come back.
I'm sure I'll get thanked for it, but you might want to invite the leader of the council to your 17th of December meeting to address you on progress with that recommendation that Cabinet's adopted.
I'm happy to do that. If people are happy to invite them along.
I think that's a very good idea.
It'd be good if we could have some kind of report beforehand, so we all know where we are. So that'd be helpful. Yeah.
I think it's a very good idea, and we can share mince pies with the leader as well on the strength of his answer. Thank you.
Lisa, you were going to say something?
Yes, thank you. Just following on from what Mr. Simmons said, there was a requirement which the Chief Exec promised to do at your meeting in July, and it was on page 11 of your agenda, which is captured in the minutes. It's the second box down, and it says, we will be following up on my strong instruction to our senior managers with a forum session where, paraphrasing, the statutory officers will be in attendance to enforce those messages. I can confirm that Ian Davidson, Richard Barrett and I delivered that session to senior managers last week in this very room, and some slides were going out and some very strong messaging was given. So I just wanted to give assurance that that part has been done.
Okay, thanks for that. So we should be noting that in our answers, in our response, is that has been done. That part's been done. Yeah, because that is quite important. But I think Well, do we deal with this separately in response, or are we doing it part of the agenda item?
I think it's part of the agenda item, Chairman. But I think you can take each part segment by segment. So if that's your response back to Cabinet, that you've received that, you've noted the session that has been referenced by Councillor Cousins and by Lisa Hastings, and that you would like to see the leader at your next meeting with a report outlining progress with the recommendation B that was adopted by Cabinet at its last meeting.
It'd be good if we got the report before the meeting, because then we know what we're all talking about, rather than some having an hour before to read it and others have to drive here, so they're trying to speed read it on the night. I think it'd be better. It's a serious enough issue to want an in-depth, time to look at it in depth.
And I think that's an understanding, and an understanding from this committee in the past, that scrutiny only functions if actually it receives the information in advance of its meetings.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So we're doing is looking at the other items on the work programme, which we're on page 27, which I've now lost again. And then, so from 31 onwards, we have the items on there. Is everybody happy with those? Is there anything, comments, suggestions they'd like to raise? Running from 31 onwards gives us a breakdown of the items.
Chairman, just picking up, I think there was from your earlier discussion just that as part of the annual budget review, which will take place at your January meeting, that you will be requiring a briefing on the use of resources section of the external auditor's report that we're expecting to receive in the November-December time. So we will add that one in because I think that was the express view from the committee earlier this evening. So that will be added in.
Peter?
Is it worth considering putting in an update on the wheelie offices?
I'm wondering, obviously we've got if we look at the recommendations where we have that, we have the task and finish on asset management. And I'm wondering if we, I know Mark has kindly offered to chair that, and you've agreed to be part of the task and finish group. I think we could probably do some quite deep work on that, along with the other assets, as we had requested a list of assets, hadn't we?
I think, yes, I think that's in the scope.
Yeah, so what we've requested is a list of the council's assets, so that members within that task and finish group,
is the scope for the assets review through the task and finish group, and that does reference a complete list of TDC assets as part of that. And we will come on to appointing those 3 task and finish groups, Chairman, on this item before we conclude it.
Yeah.
So that will address that, and we can specifically reference, and that was almost the aim of having the portfolio holder for assets here this evening, that you could help shape further the scope of that review. And I think the position in relation to wheelie can most definitely be part of the early work of that task and finish group.
I think it would be a good piece of work. I had an issue 2 or 3 weeks back with one of our closed down toilets where users had got in and were doing various things with it, and there seemed a little bit of confusion over whose department it came under. Clearly it's not going to be used again, it's not going to be opened, so it's things like that we need to look at, because they're just standing there, they're costing us money, they're serving no purpose. So I think that task and finish group can be quite effective at identifying some of these issues. Lisa?
I was also going to say that the benefit of doing the work within the task and finish group is that that's obviously done in private session, and you can get a bit more of an understanding of the commercial sensitivity and the issues. And then if there are a theme of recommendations, you want to come back on themes, you can do that back through this committee, but you'll get a better opportunity, I think, to understand the issues more. Might not be my place to say so, but in considering that review of assets and picking up the questions that you were asking, maybe one thing that the task and finish group could look at is, once we agree heads of terms at cabinet, how long do we have them for? How often would you review them? Because you can agree heads of terms in 2017, But if you don't actually ever get to the point of completing the agreement, say till 26, are they still robust heads of term? So it's just something you could think about, especially listening to the conversation you've had today.
That topic is precisely one of the things that I wanted to talk about, but obviously we can't at the moment. But it's something that I will be looking at, in particular on the task and finish group. Thank you.
Is there any other comments on the items on the list? The only one I'd mention is the beginning one, which is an off agenda, and that was post scrutiny of the Sunspot commercial workspace in Brooklands, Jaywick. I think that's all been emailed to you. So it is off agenda. If you've got any comments or concerns, I mean, it looked quite positive to me. I've only speed read it. I've not read it in depth as yet, but it seemed quite positive. If anyone has got any comments, could you please feed them back to Keith? Okay. So based on that, I think is it page 30? We have our...
Chairman, and before we move that, it's probably useful just to say, out of the nominations for the 3 task and finish groups, if I just read those names, and hopefully that will assist when we get to the dealing or disposing of the recommendations. So on asset management arrangements of the council, the nominations that were made were Councillors Bensalem, Newton, Steady, and you've already said Councillor Mark Cousins is willing to chair that group, Councillor Sudra and Councillor Harris. I'm just going to carry on. Housing strategy, development and infrastructure. Again, Councillor Harris, Councillor Bensalem, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Casey, Councillor Goldman and Councillor Fairley, and Council Enforcement, so the continuation of that as a task and finish group, Councillor Harris, Councillor Newton, yourself, Councillor Paul Honeywood, Councillor Sue Honeywood, and Councillor Anne Wiggins. So those are the 3 task and finish groups and the nominations. So on that basis, they would all seem to be viable. So when you come to that item on the recommendations, hopefully that assists to adopt that. I will say I think it would be useful to continue the delegation, not that we've actually had to use it, but a delegation to officers to make appointments to those task and finish groups should individuals need to depart from that task and finish group, and therefore we can replenish that membership over time.
I'm happy with that. Is everybody else? Okay, so we've got the recommendations as written, which are quite straightforward, particularly the second recommendation. It's just formal appointments to the task and finish groups. And then item 1 is that the committee considers and notes the progress with inquiries set out in the work programme 24-25. Feedback to the committee on the decisions in respect of previous recommendation and the list of forthcoming decisions. Now, we've obviously spoken about we'll call it the Spendles item, but it's not only Spendles, is it? It's the concern raised. So we'll need to do a third point.
Yeah, and I think you've already passed that, Chairman. So that recommendation has been duly amended by the decisions that you've already taken in that respect, and the decision in relation to the use of resources being part of the briefing that you'll receive for the finance item.
Okay. Is everybody happy with that? I need a proposer and seconder.
You should, Chairman.
I should do. Do I have our proposer and seconder? Peter, propose. Mark, second. Okay. All right. Yep. Thanks very much. So that takes us through that item. Moves us on to the last item, which is reference report from the Council's Enforcement Arrangements Task and Finish Group. Now, this should be a summary of all the work we've done to date. Does anyone have any comments, thoughts, or are of the view that it hasn't been recorded as we agreed.
Chair, whilst councillors are just refreshing their memories on what the report says, this is your second report, or the second report that you've considered from that task and finish group. The first one was on planning enforcement matters, and so there has been some time for the council to receive, and Cabinet approved of those recommendations. And so this one will now go forward to Cabinet, subject to the decision by this committee this evening. And I think certainly at the task and finish group, there has been that expectation that at some point in the work of that task and finish group, it will ask for a review or an update from the portfolio holder for planning and housing on what is happening with the recommendations that you made, again through this committee, but by that task and finish group. And in due course, on the basis that these are adopted, that task and finish group will likely ask for an update from the portfolio holder with responsibility for these areas to come and tell you about what is happening with the implementation of this, subject to Cabinet obviously accepting and endorsing those recommendations. So the task and finish group will need to look at both of these areas, and therefore not just allow it just to be recommendations up and then forgotten about. It will be looking at what has actually tangibly happened with your recommendations.
It's fair enough. I know, for example, item 9 on there I've still got concerns with. So, are we I won't read them all out. There's a whole page. It's page 64. There's a whole page of them. Are you happy for me to move those as written?
I was going to say, I don't know whether we just want to update the typos. Like in 4, manufacturers. I don't think you spell it quite like that. And I think in 5, we've put in and it should be if. I think it's if the issues persist rather than in. They were the only 2 I noticed.
Councillor Cousins for pointing those out, and we'll make sure that before they go to Cabinet that they are corrected.
Oh, well, I'll join in as well if you like. On item 9, first line, it says mains powered A hashtag or. You happy with that?
Peter?
Thank you, Chair. It was just an observation, really. It may be contained in the report, and I may have missed it. But it would seem that the incidence of fly tipping being reported has increased quite substantially. We have a mobile CCTV facility, but in the same time where fly tipping is going up, the deployment of the CCTV seems to have decreased, if I've read that correct. Does the report sort of discuss that, or?
This is something that we discussed as a group. One of the things that was raised was how many councillors are actually aware that we have this facility, because it was brought in under the previous administration, so it was quite high profile that you can put a request in for a deployable decal. I think one of the recommendations we made was for it to be highlighted with councillors.
Item 8 is designed to do exactly that, so that it's not just asking for details of what is fly tipping hotspots, but then that stepped approach to potentially deploying ambassadors to try to identify or stop fly tipping happening. And then if that it doesn't work and you're still getting fly tipping, then the use of mobile camera deployment.
Bernie.
So the deployment of these CCTVs, they're mobile. Are they restricted use to certain areas, or can they be used anywhere? Or is there only particular areas that they can be used? I mean, you're not going to put a mobile, you're not going to stick it in the middle of a field
The units that the vast
Yeah.
the majority of the units, other than I think just the one that Paul knows about, are mains powered, so they would have to be put to street furniture.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
There is a process to follow, and there's a procedure that councillors, if they have got an area of concern, and I have one in particular I've chased for quite some time now, where if you've got repeat offenders and it is an issue, a request can be made for a deployable camera. So the procedure does things like, is it possible to put it there, because obviously what's being recorded and where it's happening, and also is there a suitable power supply that probably Essex can tap in, allow us to tap into to power that. But we have found them effective in the past, and I can think of one or two areas where once the camera's gone in, it's stopped instantly because people are aware that there's a camera there.
But once the camera's been taken away, does it then reoccur? But also,
I can also say in the past that when the camera's been removed, the fly tipping has started again.
but also, right, let's say you deploy the camera, say a flats particular, I've got particular areas, but let's say flats. Would that camera be made safe? Because it could be subject to vandalism.
We've had them vandalised before now.
Oh, you have, yeah. Right, so that proves what, ineffective, or?
I think broadly speaking, it's safe to say that the cameras have been effective, haven't they? They've certainly been effective. But as I say, to me, they need to be used more than they are. And it's a case of deciding, well, as I said, under the previous administration, which I was more aware of, if you made a request, it would go to the senior officer and go to me as the cabinet member to approve. I'll be quite honest, if the senior officer says we've got a power supply, we can legally put it there, I never refused any. Because if the councillor says there's a problem, who am I to say there's not? And then the senior officer would say, yes, we've got authorisation from Essex or whatever, yes, it can go in. And then that were deployed. And I know they've been used in various places throughout the district.
So if, when used, obviously they have to be monitored, I presume, because you haven't got like an AI version, which is quite expensive anyway. But so if they're monitored and the perpetrators are caught, are they then fined? Are they taken to court? Are they made an example of, to deter others from doing such fly tipping?
I don't know what rates we've got now. I mean, I'm with you. I think personally, if you catch one, you should pursue. Someone fly tipping, you should pursue it rigorously. But also, if you get a conviction, publicise it, because that's the key deterrent to stop other people doing it. But I wonder, are you able to respond on?
I think that it will have followed the council's enforcement policy, and so all of those ones. If the evidential base is there, then action will be taken against the individuals. I think the problem that the Task and Finish group was finding was not that, it was, are they being deployed? And then back to, do councillors know how to request the deployment of CCTV, and keeping an eye on, are they, when fly tipping problems are found, are they being that stepped approach that says we will take action and we will monitor this, and here's the mechanism by which we're going to monitor it. And that's what recommendation 8 is trying to seek. And so by making sure that all councillors going forward are kept appraised of what the hotspots are, what the staged approach is, the intention would be that greater use of those techniques would be taking place, and therefore more successful evidence basis for action to be taken against perpetrators.
So, in the past, has this actually happened in the past? or is this now or is this now just being made current now, as in to pursue the particular fly tippers into court, made an example of, or is this something new that has been brought in, say, within the last 9 months or a year, has a prosecution for tendering ever occurred?
Yeah, I think that if you want that information, then because what you've got is the recommendations from the Task and Finish group, they had those several meetings. I can't now recall, having attended those meetings, whether that information came out. But if you want that information, then that information can be provided to members of the committee alongside, you know, your consideration of the recommendations.
I mean, that's fine. I don't think there actually has been. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't think there is. But I'm willing. I'm going to give these CCTV cameras a try. Right? I don't know how many you've got, but I need quite a few.
I think we've got 6, and there is a battery powered, which we'll not go into again today because it's a bit of a sore point with myself, that one. But I think there is 6, isn't it? I think.
Have to check. But
I know we did lose. Well, we're talking about vandalism. I know we lost one to vandalism when they were originally. So
Are they actually monitored by a person, or is it like on a little card, or you know? Or
the ones powered by street furniture, electric, so main supply, are monitored.
okay. So when they're monitored, how many monitors are? Is it more than one person monitoring the monitors, or because you're going to have a whole bank of monitors, I presume, because you've got some that are in town, you've got permanent ones that are fixed. I've got ones that actually in my ward that I've got that are on a particular, in say Coppins ward in Coppins, that don't work. And they're currently not monitored, which I'm addressing. I will be, but that one person that monitors all those monitors, can he catch everyone doing? Because if he's trying to watch 30 monitors, he's going to miss something somewhere.
I think if Councillor Goldman, if there's more information that's needed, then you know, we can take that away and get somebody to contact you about that. I mean, I've certainly been in CCTV control centres where operatives are monitoring many cameras, and they do it successfully. I can't talk about the circumstance at tendering because I don't know who sat there and their skill set. All I can say is CCTV operatives do monitor numbers of screens. They're not a situation where they're just monitoring one individual screen.
I mean, that's fair enough. It's a shame that we have to come to this point of cameras everywhere. It's a big brother's watching you situation there, isn't it? And sadly, it's needed because we are suffering from a lot of fly tipping and also antisocial behaviour as well. But yeah, but thank you anyway for that.
It is one of the recommendations. I think we need to raise the profile of what we're capable of doing with councillors. They're the ones that know their individual areas. They'll know where the spots are. All I can say is when I did it before, I never turned a camera down unless an officer said, well, actually, it's not physically possible or it's illegal to put it there. And apart from that, councillor knows best. It's his area. Happy to do it.
Is there like a time limit you can have the camera for, or is it?
They're usually put in for a period of, say, a couple of months, something like that.
Okay.
And then they can be. What I did was if I had requests for longer, I would say, yeah, I'm okay with that, but I'd like it reviewed after, say, 2 months. What effect is it having? Because it may be needed elsewhere.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But, you know, yeah, as I say, from memory, it's a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah, hang on. Okay, Lisa, do you want to add to that?
All I was going to say is that I think it's quite evident that those that were on the task and finish review group have probably been privy to quite a lot of conversations and information about this subject matter. But if you've not been involved on the task and finish group, then as you're demonstrating, you've got lots of questions. So maybe it's something for officers to take away to provide more information on CCTV to all members, and I'll raise it with Ian Davidson as Chief Executive, because it sounds like it's a subject that lots of members are interested in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is there any other items under this or any other comments? So are we happy to move those as they are? Do you have a proposer? Mark? Bernie, a seconder? And anybody happy with that? Okay then. All right. I think that's the last item on our agenda. So thank you all for coming. I think we've had quite a productive session this evening, and hopefully we come up with some positive questions that will receive positive answers. So thank